Hello everyone and welcome to Handmade Hero Show, where we code a complete game live on stream. We are going to do some, I guess, sort of file translation slash testing today. We want to get our game packages building from a text file spec that we have implemented and probably sort of mostly at this point parsed. But we have some additional concerns we want to address here, and I'm going to go ahead and start addressing. Let me show you what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't necessarily quite remember, okay, I don't know why I just loaded Handmade Ray. Probably because I wasn't paying very close attention. So let's go ahead and do our compile here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Looks like we left it in a compiling state, although we weren't quite finished with one of the things. So let's go ahead and jump in here. So what we wanted to do is, and what we've been working on for the this past weekend and this weekend, is we've got these HHT files. They're in the Handmade tags directory, and you've got basegame.hht and introcutscene.hht are the two ones we defined. You can see in here, they're basically just a text file format that just describes a packing list and all of the markup that we need for our files. So it says for every given file that an artist may have provided us, what the additional information that the artist didn't provide was. And that's mainly the thing we need them for. Otherwise, we could just take all the things in the directory and just gobble them up, right? So again, we just really wanted some way of cleanly saying, look, there's tons of information that we're maybe going to have to add here. At the very least, there's tags, but then there's also alignment points. We need somewhere to store that. This is where we're going to store it. And so we've got this format here, and what we want to do is we want to be able to load this, produce a result from it. So we want to be able to like produce a packed game from it. But then we also want to have a system for doing edits in the game and reflecting them back out. So resaving those edits to the text file, not just our binary format. We want them reflected in the binary format as well because we want them to be live, and like when we run, we want them to just be there. And we don't want to have to rebuild our binary or something like that every time we make a small change. So what we've got working now is good, and we don't really want to fuss with it. We just want to add this additional layer of having a text file backing store so that we know we can always rebuild the whole package with just PNGs in the text and not needing this special purpose binary format that we're running with, because it's just some hacky format we designed. It's not, you know, the kind of thing that's designed to be a standard file interchange format like PNG and text, right? Again, that's a decision we're making because we're a small game. We're not like a huge studio or something. It's totally reasonable to do a big binary format that you're going to like maintain, and that's going to be your format going forward. You can do that. It's just that's a bigger investment, and it's probably not super appropriate for our particular scenario. And like with anything else, you've got to choose the thing that's appropriate for what you're doing at the given time. So this seemed like the easiest way for us to get what we need, and so that's what we're going to be working with. Now, inside our actual code, we're sort of in the middle of it here, and we have this concept called parse top level block. And that's really what we kind of need to work with now to make sure that this actually goes well. Also, by the way, just so you know, I guess I didn't mention, Molly is with us today. Hello, Molly. How are you doing? You're a good kitten. Yes, you want to look out the window? You can look out the window if you want to. She was sleeping, so I had the window closed, but I'm going to go ahead and open the window in case she likes to watch the birds outside. Okay, so when we go to parse top level block, what we need to do is we need to have this code do two things that it's not doing right now. The first one is we need to actually create that awareness that I'm talking about, where the top level block parser is able to, you know, put data back into the text file, or at least know when it needs to do that sort of an operation. And then the other thing we need to do is actually implement the thing that is moving code from the text file when we're rewriting it into a new text file, right? Because what we want to be able to do, like I said before, is do an export that basically rewrites the text file as it was. So it's supposed to look roughly the same as when we, import it the first time, but we want to add any changes that have been made. So if you load the HHT, you do some mucking about with the alignment points, I then want to be able to insert those alignment points back in. And so that's really what we're trying to do here. And remember, that's, because if you jump back in here and take a look at the game running, the way that we wanted to do this was we want to be able to, have in this, so, if this is the game that's running, we want to be able to switch to our editor here that can edit stuff like alignment points. We want to be able to pick, what we're looking at and grab, any sort of information that we change here, put it back to the text file. So if we add like an alignment point like this, right, and we want that to be saved, and we can pick, what it means or whatever, all that stuff, we need that to be savable. So then when we go back here and have our little save or import and save buttons, right, when we click that save button, that's when we want to write that new HHT file. Now, we don't have to overwrite our old HHT file. We can make a new one, and then the user could choose whether they want to keep it or not, right? So it also gives us an extra level of sort of like security there, where we can create a new HHT file, and then the user could like diff the two and verify that the changes that he made during the edits actually were changes that they wanted, right? And that they didn't like make some changes they forgot about that they actually want to revert or whatever. So it also can provide us with an extra layer of sort of assurance there that we didn't accidentally save an edit that we didn't mean to, or things like that. So there's a bunch of stuff we could do in that regard. Even if we save it over the existing file, even that still provides us a layer of security, which is that if we assume that we're checking these things into source code control at least daily, then you at least can see the changes you made relative to like yesterday's, HHT or something like that, right? So I feel like that's, an important thing to understand about the way this process is going to work. Okay, so assuming that we're doing that, when we're in here in parse top level block, what we need to do is start by, thinking about this copy all input up to and including. We need that to be implemented, and what that's going to do is that's going to take the existing text. So as we sort of troll through this, that's going to take the existing text and move it from the old file to the new file, right? So it's going to just copy text over. As we confirm each line of text is okay, we can just copy it over, right? And that's, one thing we want to do. The other thing we want to do is then when we come in here, we need to have some understanding of when to add things that we saw that, things that we didn't see that we have added, or things like that. That's something, a place where we need to add into the text file new things that maybe weren't specified in the text file at all, right? Okay. So let's take a look at how we might do this. There's a couple different things we can do here, but if you take a look at the way this code is working, what we're essentially doing is going over this parsing loop, and every time we parse something, what we're going to do is just copy it to the output. You can see us doing that there. At the moment, you cannot edit tags, HHAs, names, descriptions, or authors inside the game. Those are not things that we have an editor for. So at least at the moment, we don't actually have to do any work for those. We can simply copy them. That's the beginning and end of the work that we would have to do, right? However, when we get to the alignment points are not that way. The alignment points actually do need that information. They need to have something in there which tells them exactly which ones we should write and which ones we shouldn't. So when we read in these alignment points, we have two things we can do. First of all, we could look and see for any given alignment point, does it match the one that we currently have? And if it does, copy that line in, right? Or we could just eat all the alignment point lines and always rewrite them with the ones that we have, right? In the case of rewriting. If we're actually doing the import, then we don't want to do that. We want to overwrite our versions with the new versions, right? But assuming we're doing a save, like assuming this is a save operation. And so that's kind of difficult. And the reason we may want to do it one way or the other way depends largely on how closely we're trying to mimic the input. If we want to keep the exact thing that the user typed in the case where it hasn't changed, that's one kind of way that we might want this to go. I'm going to try going the whole 9 here. I don't pretend that this is necessarily a good idea, but let's just see what happens if we were. I'm going to have a thing here called a line point written, and I'm just going to keep a Boolean that's the exact same size as this array of alignment points here, right? So I'm gonna keep that updated, right? And when we're doing our reads, I'm going to remember whether or not we wrote one of these out or not, right? Okay, so that's one thing that we want to do, and that will help me if I need to understand exactly what's going on there. But as you can kind of see, we still have a little bit more work to do before, like, reorganize the routine a little bit around one particularly nefarious thing. And what that is, here in the alignment, it's the first time that we have to actually specify a sub-level of specificity for an import. So if we import a body, like the hero's body, for example, there's multiple frames in a single PNG. It's got, like, a dodge left maybe, or it's got, a facing left, facing up, facing right. It's got different angles of artwork baked into that one PNG file. So what I think we want to do here is we'd like to sort of move past where we're at the moment, where we have to sort of do all of that in one sort of baked pass. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get the information about that sub-level of how the block will actually get processed, whether it's a body, a head, or a plate, a block. I'd like to get that before we do our parsing. Now, normally I just do it after, like I was doing before. But in this case, the problem is I need to be able to rewrite those text lines as I see them, because if I don't do that, I can't preserve all the comments and stuff, right? And so that's really what's going on here. So I want to be able to kind of do that part of it. All right, so let's try and mutate this code a few times and get a little further down that path. So if you look at what's going on here, you can see that a bunch of the things that we're doing, like get or create asset source file, those things could have been done earlier, and they should be done earlier probably, right? And so what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to, well, you know what, here's the thing. There is one way that might not be true. This is tough. So one reason that might not be true is if a particular asset can be targeted to a specific HHA, that would change it, because then we really don't even know where we would look for this particular packing order, which is not necessarily the end of the world. I mean, we could always pre-process it, but here's what I'm going to say. For our benefit, I'm going to go ahead and remove this. I'm going to say we don't have an HHA field. So we'll just say that the text file and the HHA have to match, right? Another way we could do it is just say that the HHA has to appear in some kind of system-wide way. So, it could have to appear at the top of this thing. That's another way to do it. But I think I'm going to go with the simpler thing that just says the text file and the HHA have to be together, maybe. Because that will just simplify our lives a little bit here, and it will make it so that we always know that text and HHA are paired, and there isn't a lot of fine-grained switching that could happen. So let's just say that that's the case. And assuming that's the case, then what we can do is now pop up here, and that'll also solve this problem for us in this case. So, for example, what we can do is we can grab this, pretty much everything down to here, right? And we can start to move it up. So when we come through this particular part of the code, where we do like, this open brace, once we have that open brace, we can then do some work on this. This is not really super necessary at this point. So this is probably not something we actually want to do. In fact, I may want to keep that here, but we at least want this, right? So what I probably want to do here is put that is default, down at a part where, before we would actually be doing any kind of actual processing of the file. So somewhere in here probably, we'd also have that. So I'm gonna leave that part right there. But what I want to do here is say, okay, the temporary memory stuff, that's actually something that we can just have out here, right? We can do the begin temporary memory part sort of at the beginning of the top level block. And I'll put the end temporary memory at the end of the block because there's not a lot of reason not to, right? So we'll just leave it like this. And then as I come through here, let's take a look at what we want to do. So if this is not the default, then what I'd like to do is, I don't need this parse pieces because it's actually happening in there. I'd like to keep this part happening basically the way it is right now. I want the HHA to be in there. This is not going to be in the fields part of things. This is actually going to be in the context now. So this is like the HHA file name that we're talking about here. This will produce the full asset name. We can then see if that file actually exists, and assuming that it does, we can then create a match for it, right? And if we get that match, then we can do the additional work here of testing to see whether it's been modified. Once we have that, we can actually do our check to see if we want to do parse pieces. That can happen right here. And then we can proceed with this, the rest of it later on. So I think that's where I want to be at the start. So I want something that looks kind of like this. I probably want this to be here. So this will be like an import type. And that'll be like import none probably. And we'll get that here like so. And then we can kind of grab, and we don't really want that. We probably want this, right? To happen outside. So like this, right? So again, just doing the first part of this, we get all of that information up front. So now we have like our tags array, our import type, and all that sort of stuff. And the problem that we'll have there is the append tags. That part is happening inside parse pieces. Again, I'm going to start to pull that out because again, it's creating too much rigidity there for the way we want to do things. So then we go through our parsing here, right? And remember, I sort of got loaded in here, this part where we're going to do the import type check. So we're still going to do that. But anyway, we come through here. We're going to do, we've got, parsing of alignment points and so on. And then when we get to the end, here is when we're actually going to start doing some more of this work. So we'll reinstitute this check to make sure if we had errors so far, then just don't bother doing any imports because we know that this was a busted text file, right? And so we don't want that occurring. So here we have our import check. Assuming that we actually have an import that we're going to actually do, then we can do the work of actually, creating it, right? Now, this import type equals import type none part of things. I guess what I want to say there too is that may be something that really should just create an error. So when we come through here, I think maybe we want to do, and I guess one way to do that would be, to keep it within this block. Well, I guess we don't even really need to do that. We could just do it up here. We could just say, look, when we create one of these things and we look and see if we've got the default or not, right? We could just say, if it's not the default, we're going to go in here and do a parse pieces on the import type. And right there, if the import type doesn't come back with something valid, so if it's none, we will do an error so that we know on that block token, report the error that we don't understand what this thing is supposed to be, right? Like we just don't even know what it's supposed to be. Furthermore, these things here should also have their errors associated with them. I don't know if we had errors here. Yeah, like we had unrecognized block type and file not found. So we want to keep these errors. We want to just move them to where they're now actually occurring. So let me just grab those and bring them up here. So again, what we want to do is say in here, unrecognized block type is going to be right here, right? And file info is going to be here, right? So we want something, oops, we want something that looks sort of like this, but we're still not quite done. You can see this file info, file date stuff. That's checking to see whether we need to re-import this. Again, that's sort of a thing that just says whether we need to re-import the PNG itself, but it doesn't really tell us much else. So that's actually something we're not going to be doing this way anymore. It's just an out-of-date check. And so what we really need now is this concept that do we need to rebuild the asset, right? So we can just say, like, look, is this asset dirty or not? You know, is it something that needs to be rebuilt? Another way to say that would be like needs a rebuild, right? And so we can say here whether or not it needs to be rebuilt or not. And what we can do is say we default to the fact that it doesn't. But in the case that these things don't match, then it at least needs a rebuild in that case. So if someone changes the PNG. But then we also need a way to rebuild it if other things don't match, such as if you change the tags, right? Now, when we're actually looking at this, we probably want to keep two states. We probably want to say, is the art dirty or just the metadata, right? So we need like a needs full rebuild and a needs meta rebuild. In the case where the actual PNG is changed, that's a full rebuild, right? We need to re-import the whole thing, right? But if that's not the case, right? If we just have a situation, you know what? I can do this. Let's do it this way. Keep this a little cleaner here. All right. So now you can see this starting to come together. The only issue we've got right now is the append tags here is not actually something that we know yet. And so we kind of need to put that down here, and we need to stop passing it in. So we need something that looks a little bit more like that. And so we kind of have to reverse the way in which we were doing some of that tag appending kind of work. And so we'll take a look at how we're going to do that a little bit later, but you get the idea. So in here we do our parse pieces. This is the thing that'll let us know exactly what everything was supposed to be. And when we do get our create asset source file, we can also now know what the tags were for any given thing. So now we have some way that we can actually differentiate between these two things and start to think about them. Okay, so now we get down to the actual parsing. You can see here where we've got our append tags. We'll fill that out later, and that's the thing we're going to have to reverse from the parse pieces, because parse pieces would weld those two things together, and that's not going to work now. So what we want to do here is just sort of now proof this routine. So as we read through here, again, most of these things are fine because we're going to get all of these fields, and we're going to get the tag list out and all that sort of stuff. We're going to parse the alignment points. And anytime we see an alignment point, we also now have the option of updating it or not. So we have the information we need, so we'll look at how we're going to do that in a minute. But after we get done with all of that stuff and we see the final semicolon, then we can actually look and say, did everything work? If it did work, let's go ahead and assign the default fields if this was a default. If not, let's go ahead and process it as an actual art asset. Now, this data for alignment points and alignment points written, that obviously should go up here because that's happening as part of this parse. So we want that up at the top there. And in here, this is where we actually do our updates. Now, as you can see, we've got different ways that we might want to do these updates, and that's why I say we kind of want to break these processes apart a little bit. Rather than having the tags welded in there, I think we want to do the tags as a separate kind of a write, and the process style, import, single, all that stuff. We need to start doing these as a little bit more striated, right? We need to kind of think about this a little bit more specifically. So what we want to do is first say, all right, we need to break this into two parts. We need to break it into one part that actually just takes the PNG and gets the data out. And that's when we need it if we need to do a full rebuild, right? And then we need another part that says, look, if all we were doing is just updating the tags of this thing, so we don't actually need to reread the PNG, don't do that work. Because remember, reading the PNG can be very expensive. These are big, high-resolution files. We actually do processing on the pixels. That's a lot heavier weight than just a simple update that says, add this one tag. So if we wanted to add a tag to like 100 things, we don't want to reparse 100 PNGs for no reason. That's just dumb. Because we know which one we're doing, we might as well do it correctly. So if we need to do needs full rebuild, then we're going to go through this whole situation where we actually do the entire update. So we update the date and the checksum and its contents and all that sort of stuff, parse the PNG, do what we need to do, right? And that part is the part that we actually need in terms of doing the processing, the multi-tile import, and all that sort of stuff. The problem is, as you can see, that will also update things like tags fields and so on, which we don't really actually need to do. And so we kind of want to separate these two things out into like almost like the import of the PNG and then like a stamping process, which like goes through and then like updates the tags in anything that it would need to update the tags for. And so as hairy as that is, I think that is what we actually want to do. And so although, you know, we got this HHA append index that we stuck on the info, I think what we want to do now is kind of like say, yeah, sorry, oops about that. Not really what we wanted to do. Take this info and the tags, get that off of there, right? So that's not going to be on there anymore, right? This stuff is not going to get passed anymore. And so what we're going to do with the multi-tile, single tile, and plate imports is we're just going to, that's just going to import it's strictly going to import the image data, and it's not going to touch anything else, right? Okay. We still need this part, the append HHA index, the get or create by stem indexing sort of thing, right? And that get or create by stem part of things, that's actually going to want to happen in either case. So if we need to do a full rebuild or if we need to do a partial rebuild, we're going to want to do that. And so what we can do here is just say, look, actually this info thing, that's actually part of the partial rebuild. So like if needs meta rebuild or whatever, that can go down here. Let me just verify that I've got that. That's the if needs full rebuild. Oh, hey, look, my little scope thing even told me that, right? You can see right here, if needs full rebuild, right? Anyway, that goes into the meta build part, and what we want to do here is have this append HHA index. That's actually just going to be something that we use to talk about as we flow through the system. So I don't know if we want to pass the HHA index or not. I suspect we probably just do. So in here, we're going to replace that stuff with, when it flows down the pipe, is going to actually just be, here's the HHA to write this to, go nuts, we're not going to talk about anything else, right? Off we go. So that's what I want to do here, and again, this is going to be the context HHA that we're talking about, and so this is not going to be that at all. This is going to be that to do. Oops, I didn't cut and paste that to do. There we go. And so that's part one, right? Part two is if we need a meta rebuild, and the meta rebuild will happen if we do a full rebuild as well. So basically, what we want to say is, look, if we did a full rebuild, we're going to stamp things. It's free to anyway, we might as well. And there might have been new tiles added because maybe someone filled in a grid square that they didn't previously do, right? The needs meta rebuild and needs full rebuild, those two things, regardless of which one gets set, we're always going to restamp. So it's just the PNG part that's going to not happen in the case where we only need to update like tags or author information or something like that. So what I want to do now is say, okay, in that case, now we've got a thing that just says, look, we're going to stamp, or stemp, I guess, as the case may be. We're going to stamp this thing. So I'm going to do the same thing I was doing before, where I say, look, give me, you know, one of these indexes that I can use here. And if you can't find it, that's not good, and we're going to call that an error. I'm not sure why I'm missing one of these, but apparently I am. And that's the if of is default, so that one there is fine. Again, check out those little scope guys. I'm glad I added those. They're actually very handy. They tell me exactly what those things were. I've got a better version of that that's coming down the pipe, by the way. Oh my god, I forgot to announce. Crap. I forgot to announce next weekend is 4-Coder Jam. That was a mistake. I regret not announcing that at the beginning of the stream. At the end of the stream, I will talk more about that. Next weekend is 4Coder Jam, and you're going to want to be there for that. So anyway, I forgot to announce that. I'll announce at the end of the stream because it's what's happening next weekend. Okay. So when we get to here, we want to stamp what we're talking about, right? And so the way that we're going to do that is we've got the append HHA index, right? And we're going to say we need to stamp this stuff with like the tags and all that sort of thing. When we do our process multi-tile import, right, that's going to give us sort of a set of images that are going to go into a particular, place as we sort of cycle through them, right? And what we need to do is we need to, in fact, I guess, why do we not have the match should come down through here? Is there a reason? No, I'm looking at this, I'm wondering, when we do this match, here, are we not? Oh, we are, we're passing it. Good. Yeah, we're passing the match. I'm like, because that's the thing we actually need. We need that match. So this, right, needs to be up here as well. So that match is going to tell us like where this stuff goes, right? And so all we really need to pass when we're doing the stamping is saying, look, this match that we're talking about is what we need to do that, to know where all the assets were that we imported. Now that I think about it, was there a reason that itself doesn't have the HHA index in it? So that's kind of interesting because, yeah, it doesn't. So that asset source file should really have its HHA bound in there, I want to say. So I kind of feel like this notion of the asset source file kind of needs to be upgraded because it's going into a particular HHA, and that knowledge is important, right? And so I almost want to say this append HHA index, what I think we really want to do here is say that, so it's like which one of the files is this going into, right? This thing. And you don't want to dangle a preposition, so just make sure you don't dangle your prepositions, kids. So when we stamp it, really that should be sufficient now that I think about it. And when we acquire this match, I think what we want to do is actually then expand this notion a little bit more. I like the way this is shaping up. Again, when you work with code, you start to see the correct things emerge, and it's always very satisfying, in my opinion. So when we create that match, what we want to do is sort of at the outset here, assuming that's not the default, what we want to do is say, let's get or create the HHA that we're going to use here and say, let's find this one. Now, if we get one back, then we're in a good situation. If we don't, we're kind of in trouble, right? And so what we want to do there is say, when we get or create one of these HHAs that we're going to use, we want to then update the match. And if we were told, because let's hypothesize, what if we move one of our assets from one HHA to another, right? Well, when we get the asset source file and we look at which desk file index, which one it was coming from, right? That record needs to be checked as dirty as well. Because if it says it's going into file 3, but we're telling you it needs to be going to file 5, we need to do a re-import, right? We have to do a full rebuild in that case. So that's very important. So actually, I may even do that sort of up here where I say, look, as part of this process, I'm going to do a check, and I'm going to create this HHA here to say where this thing is going to go into, right? and that will help me determine what I need to know. You know what? I think I may have been premature. Looking at the way this code is working out, it looks like you can still specify the HHA per thing, possibly. Well, not really because of this. So I guess that means, now that I say it, you don't ever move between two of those things. You can't really move one. Because since the path is fixed, the path is always supposed to be underneath the HHA. If you moved one, you wouldn't find the original one. You wouldn't see it. So we really don't need to do what I was saying. I'm going to leave it in here because it's an easy enough choice for it to do, but it's not as necessary as I thought it was. It's not really going to do anything. So assuming we've got an append HHA index, what I'm going to do here is say we've got a match, right? So assuming we've got a match, and you know what? I can really just check if match, because match will only get set in the case where it's not the default. So match is really a thing that tells us that anyway. And in fact, in here, we could do the same thing. Well, you know, right? We can just look and see if match is valid. If it's not valid, we don't need to proceed. So that's fine. And all I need to do here is say, look, whatever match we got, look at the desc file index, right? Whatever that desc file index is. If the append HHA index is different, so if these are not the same, then we need to update that. Oops, that's supposed to be index, not name, by the way. So in the case where desc file index equals the append HHA index, we don't have to do anything, but in this case we do. And again, just to support moving assets, which really can't happen, I guess, but if for some reason we change this path around and want to, needs full rebuild can just get set to true here. So we know that that was a change that we now need to record, right? So we need to do a re-import because we're going to a different target than we were before. So that's fine. You know, I don't see a lot of problem with that, honestly. It's okay. And so this right here will get that HHA index for us, and that tells us what's going on with the match. That means that later on, we don't need to do that anymore. And so if we just go ahead and vaporize this part of things, right? We're still doing that checkup here, so we're still doing that. That means that can be eliminated from these paths. And so rather than passing an HHA index, the match actually has that in there, which is what it should have done in the first place. And then, you know, off you go, right? Now, and again, I could make base name match on just the PNG name, and then you could move one thing from another and it would retain its data. I don't want to do that. The reason I don't want to do that is I'd like to support multiple people making multiple HHAs that have the same named files in them, because they might have been made by two different people. I have no idea what the other person was naming their files. So as long as they're different HHAs, so as long as you pick a unique name for your distributable HHA, you don't have to worry about the conflict. That is the more important part of this, right? So that's why I don't want to push it there. I want to leave that being unique based on the HHA, because that I think is important. So yeah, like I said, moving on, if we do a stamp of these and I want to pass down the assets here, again, now's our chance to fix this import info nonsense. We've got the HHT fields, and that's good. I'm going to go ahead and put that this into here. Like so, and that can actually be potentially an index as well. So when we see the HHA, we could actually set the index there if we want to, because this is actually going to be set as the index. So we can actually pull that part out, and I should. We should just do that. So here in the HHT fields, that name, author, description, that's actually what we needed in terms of the import source info. You can see it's exactly the same thing. So what I'm going to do there is just call this HHT fields for now. And we're going to pass that directly. So instead of having to do this nonsense, we're just going to pass fields down to the stamping function. We're going to delete this, and that, again, really simplifies that process. So stamp asset, that's going to go or go through all the assets in this match and stamp them with the values from the fields. It's also going to need that tag array, so it's going to need the information that's coming out of this. So this right here, that tag set, that's going to have to be in there as well. And so if you look at what's going on here, we want to pass that address. Once we hand those over to stamp assets, it should be pretty straightforward for it to do that asset stamping. That'll be good. And then we've got a much cleaner import process here, right? So this is the part that actually processes the image data. And that's great. This is the part that actually does the metadata, and that's great. And so this should all flow pretty cleanly now. Like, that's pretty reasonable. I don't know why that's a to-do. To be completely honest with you, I'm not sure why that's a to-do. I got nothing. That seems like just a note. If somebody wants to go back to when if you look at the GitHub, it'll tell us when we do. If there was an actual reason why that was a to-do, it doesn't have an actual to-do. Like, that's just what you want to do, right? Update it first, because we then pack the assets, and since we're reloading the PNG, we want to stamp the date and checksum of the PNG, right? I mean, that's just kind of obvious. Oh, oops. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I got nothing. So yeah, if we do the checksum and the file date stuff, then we're good to go, and we've reprocessed everything, and that's all fine. So I think this is all reasonable, and again, we just have to actually implement that stamp assets function, but that's a pretty good loading scheme there. And so now let's just go back and say, okay, that HHA part of things, let's actually make that work a little bit more properly. So, in here where we actually do this part, this can actually be done a little bit further down, which is to say now we can actually do that right here where we update that right at the beginning. This part of things will move into the outer code, because when we actually do a parse of the HHT itself and we build that context, that actually is the part that's going to want to know what the HHA is, and we could make that be like a top-line directive or something like that, and we could even make that be something that you can actually change inside an HHT if you want to. You just can't change it inside a block, right? So we could, if we wanted to do something like this, where we say like HHA, I don't know, like, I don't know what we would say exactly, but we could say something like I don't know. I have no idea. But we could do something like that if we wanted to, and then you could still feel free to make some kind of thing that packs to multiple of these. I don't know. But why not? My excuse for everything that we ever do is just it's an educational stream, so I don't really have to make great decisions. as long as I'm showing something useful that you might take and use yourself, off we go, right? So I can, if I want to, just add like what is essentially a preprocessor directive here that says, you know, there's a pound, and if in here we said that sometimes, you know, going back and looking at what we said here, you know, there's a string comes after it. So if we come through here and say, look, you know, if the token type that we see in the outside is a pound, it's like a preprocessor directive of some kind, and we're gonna, excuse me. We're going to use that, right? And so this is a preprocessor directive. We get the directive that we want, so we just say, here's the directive, get token. And we can then look at the directive like so. And we could even, you know, we could even have multiple of these directives if we want to. So for example, we could even support a pound include, right? And we could support a HHA. So that seems cool, right? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem horrible to me. I also don't know why we have a break here, because this will break automatically. So that's kind of dumb. But anyway, so when we're going through here, what we could do here is, like, this is just an unrecognized directive. Here are directives. Molly has an automated feeder that goes off regularly throughout the day, and so that she always, like, basically, like, she gets wet food once a day, but she also has like a little automated feeder that will just put out dry food for her. So it's kind of like a thing that she always knows is reliable, and you know, if no one's here to feed her, it will still go off so she can have meals at her regular times, right? And so when you hear it go off, she's always a little bit early. I think she can hear like a little bit better than we can, and so as soon as the thing starts to go off, she's off to get food. So that's where Molly went. I don't know if she'll come back. She might want to do some exploring and, you know, walk her route, but that's where she went. Okay, so if we have an include directive, again, we could just include a file here and, you know, to do process include. And then the HHA, again, is just going to set that target. And so that's really just this thing. And so anytime we see one of those, we're going to want to do this. And inside here, where we've got sort of the context HHA index, we're going to set that to 0. And what we want to do is say, look, you're not allowed to have a block that doesn't have an HHA assigned. And so what we're going to do in here is just say, if we see a top-level block, there had better be an HHA index. So we're only actually going to go down that route if we see one of those. So if we haven't seen one yet, then we'll just say, hey, yeah. Also, by the way, this should be directive. Here's our token type equals identifier. That means we need to have an HHA. If we did, great. If we didn't, I don't know what to call this. Import blocks are not allowed to appear before at least one HHA directive. How's that for a cryptic error message? All right, so you know, we'll just fault on that and say, yeah, we're not going to process art assets if you don't actually specify an HHA in the packing list. We come through here and we say, all right, we're going to get that HHA. We'll find out what the heck's going on there, right? And so let's get our actual one that when we do create HHA by stem, we'll grab that out. And so we'll just say that's directive text, right? And so that will try to create it, and assuming that it can create it, when we get it back, then we can do this. So that should allow us to set those HHAs and process going forwards, and also ensure that we actually have one. And now we've recovered the functionality that we lost before. That way you can't start an import without knowing where it's going to go, because that just creates a pre-parse problem. So that seems fine to me. I don't have a problem with that. If we wanted to handle includes, it's actually probably not that hard. If we wanted to, we can just do an getter create asset source file, probably just using the base name. Although since they're in the tags directory, I don't know, maybe that's not entirely true, but I suspect it is probably true. So yeah, we could just actually do the include pretty easily, right? Let's go ahead and check that out actually. So if we wanted to, if you look in here, all it needs is like the platform file handle. So yeah. So if we want to do that, we just could. Let's do that. It seems fine, right? So if we want to do something like this, oops, I forgot to cut and paste the actual info part of it. I wanted that. So if we wanted to have an include directive, that's actually trivial, right? It's just reentrant code. It's probably not the best thing in the world because we're not storing a coherent context here. But we can fix that. We can even fix that. So if we want to, we can make this work. Let's just grab the HHT context. In fact, we can even do the include limit, so that's actually not that hard either. So when we come in through here, let's just do it. We can say, here's the context. The file group's going to be this. The assets we already know. The temp arena is this. And since I mean, you look at what's going on there with that memory arena pointer, that's actually just part of the context now, so we don't even really need that to be done that way. We could do it like this. I'm going to leave it like that just to make it a little easier on people so that they don't have to do that ampersand every time, so I'm going to leave it like that for no real reason, but that's what we'll do. And so I think that's probably all we actually need to do. I think that's fine. And I think we don't care about this because we're not going to do space reclamation. We're just going to say that's something that you should do on your own. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that away. We're going to leave this. This is all going to come up into this function here. And rather than passing this stuff down, this is just going to take the HHT context. You can see what I'm doing here, right? Hopefully it's pretty clear. That tokenizer is going to get put in here. I'm going to just to, again, make it so that people don't have to do the ampersand. So if you look at what's going on here, we're now just going to take that context, and the only thing we really need is that platform file info. So when we get that info, that's what we'll start with, because you can see in here, well, actually platform file handle, I guess. Well, I guess really that part, I guess that part's fine. So we could just pass the info, right? And do this. Seems good, right? Do we have a close file handle? Yeah, we do. It's right there. And so really all we need is that info. So this routine now becomes much, much cleaner, I think, because it can now do reentry and have everything and have a little party with all its little friends. So there's that context file info we've already got. So we just call parse HHT in a loop with that particular block. Inside here, we do parse HHT. We just tokenize whatever we got. If we want to do another file info here that comes by and include, we can. We just say, look, the tags file is going to be in there somewhere. So why don't you go and get that? Here's the directive text. So go ahead and load that include. Oh, wait, we need the actual file name text. So we need to get that file name up. Oh, hello! You have returned. What an auspicious occasion. Why do you always go that way? You know you can't balance on that. Anyway, so we go ahead and get the file name out of here, and then we try to load it. Either we can or can't load it, and if we can't load it, then it's an error, right? So if that file name is not available, we can just, or we can't load it. It's like unable to include file, or something, right? So we go ahead and get that file. This can be a require token, so we can say that this has to be a string because it does have to be a string. We can go ahead and get it. We don't need a subdir here because it's always going to be in tags. So we go ahead and get that file by path, and we see what's up. We inside our file info, when we actually, assuming we actually get it, we just parse the HHT and we pass it in. Now you can see that this is reentrant, which means that if you include the same file, it'll just include itself over and over and over again until it runs out of stack space and crash. If we want to prevent that, we absolutely can. All we have to do is just insert into the context, right? In fact, let me just go ahead and do that here. Into the context, we just need a thing that says, hey, what we're actually going to do here in, oops, we don't actually need this either. That's HHA index. We just need a thing that's like include depth. And every time we do an include, all we have to do is just ink that number and make sure that we're not going to do that. So if we do say this, we can just do an error and say, look, when we got this directive, maximum include depth exceeded. So that way we won't just spiral out of control if someone makes a stupid mistake. And all we have to do, like I said, to do that is say, look, whenever whatever this context is, whatever the include depth is, just increment it. And if it's less than some reasonable number, like 16, let's say, I mean, you shouldn't ever be doing much more than that, right? I don't even know. I would think an include depth of 1 would be sufficient for most of our purposes, but all right. So let's say you got something ridiculous going on. If you blow past that include depth, it's an error, and we're going to get mad. And we're going to issue an error, and we're going to stop. So that should allow us to do an include as well. Off we go. So this all should just run and be fun and happy, and everything's great, right? Off we go. So once we've got that, that allows us to do the HHA targeting, and it allows us to do this parsing in this order. And so really all we're down to now to finish things off is we have to write the stamp function, but then we got to get back to this sort of touchy aspect of how do we want to actually sort of merge these, like do that text transfer, right? And so what I'd like to do first is say, well, we know that during stamping, we're going to pass the tags, and we're also going to pass, let's say, the append tags, right? So that append tags is coming in here that we built. We want to tack those onto the end. And so when we do the parse pieces bit, right, we don't expect that to do any appending anymore. So like in here where we do parse pieces and we've got those append tags, we're just not going to do that. So we're going to let this thing just produce the version that it needs. Now, the nice part about doing it this way is this work could now be amortized, right? We could then say to do Casey, this could now just be built one for each type ahead of time, and we don't have to reconstruct the tags over and over and over and over. And we should do that, but we don't really need to do it quite yet. So since we're making tons of changes, there's no such sense making it harder for ourselves in that regard, right? Okay. So taking a look at what's going on here, this is that append operation, right? And what we're going to be doing is adding that stamping function on here. And that stamping function is really the thing that we need to start thinking about there. So let's, we can go ahead and do that. And that will sort of have more to do as we get there. So all of this code now that sort of had this append tags, that can end. And that even cleans up this code path, and it makes it not dependent on who was calling it. And that's really the important part. That's what will also allow us to, again, cache this, so we just build those templates once at the start of an import, and we won't have to build them for everything. And that would be really nice, right? Because it's just a waste of everyone's time that this is happening every single time through. And that was just us being sloppy, right? That's just the way we happened to write it because it was easiest. But it's not the best way to do it. And so we're improving the code that way as well, which is kind of a nice fringe benefit of kind of cleaning up that path. Okay, so getting rid of the append tags here so that those don't get passed through anymore. Now we're pretty much good to go. All of this stuff does what it needs to do, and we're good. Item tags here, I don't know, and we don't have those defined yet, so we're just going to insert those later, and that'll be fine. So all of that looks pretty clean. If you look here at write all HHA modifications, this should still just work fine. So all we really need to do now is just that stamping, and then focus on the text transfer. And I think we're good to go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and recompile. I don't know what Molly was doing there. She's doing whatever she's doing. She's a kitten. She has her ways. When we do write image to HHA, remember we got rid of this info. And so if we take a look at what's going on there, I actually don't know why it's complaining about that. Asset index, what's the problem? File is an undeclared identifier. It's right here. So I guess it just doesn't like that part. But anyway, so what I was saying is that info struct, we're not actually going to allow that info struct to be passed through anymore. That's not going to be there. Asset source file will be there. And if I jump in here, you can see where it's getting the asset file index. That's actually now going to come from the file, right? I don't think we called it that. What did we call it? We called it des file index. So that's coming, again, from that file. And then when we look at where the actual info is coming from, what you can see is like these write asset strings stuff, right? That's where the info was coming from. Now, we don't actually want to do that. Again, that's the part that wants to be done separately. And what you can see from write asset data is like this stuff is not actually touching that. All of this is actually the part that needs to be handled sort of separately. So it's actually this part here that's important. This is all the annotation data, right, that comes with the asset. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to do this part as the separate pass that will update the asset in a different way, right? And looking at how this works when, looking at how this works when we actually do the write asset data is the thing that's presumably rewriting out the asset itself. No, I guess it's not. So these things, right, all HHA modifications. Let me see where that's happening. Yeah, so I think, because this just sets modified to true, right? I'm assuming someone sets it to true somewhere. So that write asset data call will set modified equal to true. I don't really know why it's only happening there. Because you would think that that should actually happen sort of in a broader context. So we may move that modified. That may want to loft out a little bit further, right? So that I'm not sure about. But what I can say is the simple part that I wanted to actually do is actually, very straightforward and exactly what we want. So here where we set all of the asset annotation data, here what I can do is also set the annotation data here pretty straightforward, right? So when we do these asset indices, you know, when we export the PNGs and stuff, all that stuff can get set. That's exactly what we want. But then what we can do in addition to that is just grab this part out that was sort of a separate piece there. In fact, we can actually even take the, well, I guess the file date and file checksum part is important as well. So we'll leave that in place. That's fine where it is. We're going to grab this out here, and inside stamp, that's where this is going to happen. So when we actually go to stamp the assets down, this is where that will actually happen. And this way we can rewrite the all the stuff that we had happen on this particular pass through. Now, it's an open question what you want to do with the error stream. It may be that you want to preserve the original error stream, and so when you update the tags, you don't want to destroy the error stream that existed previously. I'm not sure how we really want that to happen. I think that probably we just... I think that probably we would want to have two separate error streams, one for the PNG and one for the metadata. Probably. I just really don't know is the problem. So I'm not sure which should happen in this case. What I will say is I think, thinking about it a little bit deeper, I think what we may want to do is take a different tack with the error stream. So we'll talk about that later. We'll get those working and then play with them. All right, so let me go ahead and fix the errors that are in the upper part of the file. Let me see here, U64 to U32. Oh, that didn't need to be U64. That can just be U32. So I just want to fix the part where we were passing through source infos. Those I just don't think are necessary anymore. So what should happen is the info struct here can get struck. It doesn't need to actually occur. So everywhere that we were previously passing it will just go away. And so people who have these source infos come along, those will just get nerfed, and that's all fine. And I'll just kind of work through that slowly because it's just a case of nobody needs it anymore because it's not actually using any of that. And these are just errors that are, you know, spurious errors from the compiler that are actually just go away automatically. So yeah, none of that matters at all. Right. So I think that's probably most of it. What is it complaining about here? I'm not sure. Ntags doesn't take 4 parameters. What does it take? Tokenizer category. So yeah, what was that original then? I didn't want that to jump, but it jumped. So result is the import tag array. I don't really understand how that was how it was. So this was returning an import grid tag temp and passing an import tag array that didn't actually happen. So this is just code we don't care about. I think that was just old news. All right, so what you looking at, Molly? What's going on? You seem agitated. You doing okay? You just got the zoomies? I don't know what's going on out there, but she's pretty intent on it. All right, so if we take a look at what's going on in the lower part of the code, just to make sure that we've still got stuff going on that's supposed to be going on. So the append HHA index is actually coming from the context now, right? So there's an HHA index that's associated with that context, and we want to update that every time. When we actually work through the code lower down here, so, oops, I don't actually care about this right now. Let me take a look. So yeah, here we're saying that there should be some kind of a HHA file name that we're loading out. So we do actually want that. I had eliminated it before, but right, we need it for the path. So we do want an HHA base name, I guess, right? An HHA stem we want. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back in there. And that's easy enough to get because all that is when we actually grab the token here. So when we go through this code and we say parse HHT, anytime that we're going to set that HHA in here, all we need to do is say when we actually find it, we'll set that stem. So basically, oh, you know what? We need this as well. So we grab the HHA name here. We're going to say that stem, and I'll call it stem. We're going to remember that stem, and when we actually do this, we're going to say, let's go ahead and get that, right? And I can actually do it like this. That should be sufficient. That lets us remember both things. So we actually pre-get the index and we get the stem so we can actually produce it properly here. The file name.txt, that's this up here. And remember, that's only valid in the non-default case. So that's all fine. Looking at the rest of this, it looks to me like these code paths can be welded. So all of this can move up, right? And this part should be able to just operate here, I think. So I believe we can now simplify that code path as well, because we can just get the file name. We can do our file matching attempt and, proceed from there. So I think that code path can actually be simplified quite a bit. Taking a look at what's going on here, let's see. There was previously a file name mentioned here. We don't need that one anymore. So that's good. I'm going to go ahead and make stamp have this basically ifed out so we can jump right to the first error easily. And yeah, let's see, that needs a semicolon. We can open our file handle here. Looks like the file info in question is not being preserved, which makes sense. We're getting it up here. So that's actually the thing and not the file name that needs to be placed up here. So there's our file info. And looks reasonable. We should also say the import type gets initialized to, what was it? Import type none. Okay. So here we now need to look at what the definition of these actually was. So if we go to like multi-tile import, it's got the tag array. I don't know what the tag array is actually being used for. Right image to HHA is taking the grid tags, but I don't actually know if they're used. So we do need to know the tag array it looks like. So I'm going to continue passing that because it looks like we want to know the type when we add these things in, right? So that seems good. Probably. It does mean that maybe we need a thing here that says if we change the metadata in a way that is going to change the types of the tags, that may require a full rebuild because that would mean that we'd have to actually have the assets stamped differently. So this part right here is a little confusing because that's the only place that it's used. And that's really sucky, right? Because that means we're passing that whole thing down for no other reason than just the fact that we're calling set asset type on it, which just seems real dumb. So I'm going to actually say no even to that. I'm going to say that goes in stamp, and then that whole thing is getting cleaned out as well. So up here, we're going to do this, you know, if we detect that the asset type previously didn't exist, for when we're doing the stamp. And it looks like the way that that has to happen there is when we reserve a new asset, right? The asset type, if we didn't already have one, right? So we'll have to deal with that, but otherwise that's pretty good because this tag's type ID doesn't actually then need to happen. And with this, I guess what I would say is the part where we do sprite found in what is required to be blank tile, again, that part we can actually save for later. So that can happen in here, right? So the stamping process can still, again, be separate. So when we come through here and do all of this asset processing, now we don't need the tags at all. So write image to HHA just doesn't need to take those. And that solves that problem for us, right? And here, again, when we're looking at this HHA asset and we do this assignment, again, don't really need that. We don't need to update that. That stuff can be updated later. So this can just be updated in here, right? And these parts that are being updated will just get updated again. So this stuff's all fine, and it can all be rewritten. But off we go. So when we... Is that my phone? I thought my phone was on silent. I guess my phone was not on silent. So much for a professional podcaster, or a professional streamer, I should say. All right, so on here when we do write image to HHA, we're removing the tags from the list, and so anywhere from the write image to HHA, so that stuff doesn't have to happen. And now we just got that partitioned into two parts, which I like better. So the metadata can be updated separately from the image data, and we should probably take that as far as we can go. So later on, we probably want to keep doing that. Let's take a look at process multi-tile import now. So anywhere we were doing this before, so there's the multi-tile, here's the plate. I'm going to take the tags out of there because, again, they just aren't necessary. Okay, so now grid tag array, where's that happening? Hold on a second. This is not going to happen, right? That goes away. And we've got stamp assets, platform open file. Okay. So inside here, this is context file group, because remember that's getting passed down now. That temp arena is happening here. And, you know, honestly, inside this parts HHT bit, I think, yeah, everything, this all seems fine. We could move that clear further down if we wanted to. We could make that something that actually clears out the HHTs as they're brought in. I don't think we care about that, so I'm not going to bother, but we could if we needed to. Stamp assets is the thing we're going to have to write. File info here this is getting passed in. So this is actually sort of a sub file info, or included might be. This is the included file info. And so we want that to work. So we'll go ahead and have that work there. And in here, if we can't open an HHA, then we're going to do HHA stem in this case. What else we got? When we do parse top level block, that's just a creation of too many ampersands. Oops. File group looks fine there. File group star. Is there a reason that's not a star? Oh, so that actually returns the actual file group. That seems fine as well. So that can just be stored. And we're almost down to the end. Tough format files. Yep. Yep. Okay. Let's see what else we got. So that looks like that. All right, so now we have come to the part where we really gotta figure out what's going on here. So if we actually call, like imagine we have this function where we say, here's the assets, here's the asset source file, here's the HHT fields, here's the tags, right? This is what a import grid tags, and this is an import tag array. Something like this. So if we actually start with this, now what we have to do is figure out how to actually make something that goes through all of the assets that were ever pulled in for this particular file, and rewrite all of their asset headers to make sure that they now contain the metadata that we've received. And furthermore, what we need to do is when we actually go in here to parse top level block, we want to have a thing that says whether or not we actually need to save based on that operation. We could just not bother. At some level, we don't care, right? So it's a little bit tough to say whether we actually want to be too specific about saying we need to rewrite these or not. In other words, we could just always restamp all the assets. And especially if we did a little bit of string pooling, we would probably never know the difference. But I'd rather not do that, so I think I'm going to actually try to make it so it's a little bit more specific, just so we don't bloat our files during development. So in here, when we actually do stamp assets, I'm going to get rid of the if0, and we're going to actually try to make this work. When we go and do the write HHT part of this from before, which is right up here, I need to follow this logic a little bit. So this part here where we sort of specify what's going on, inside the file asset indices, you can see as we flow through this code that down here we're going to assign this thing. And in terms of the type that gets assigned to it, what's kind of a little bit frustrating about that is that we don't actually store that piece of information anywhere, right? It's just inside the tags, and it's impossible for me to actually know whether or not we hit this path or this path. And we kind of need to know because we need to be able to set the type ID on whatever this thing is. I think that's really not that big a deal, though, because inside Handmade asset, it's pretty easy for us to just go ahead and take an asset, and when we look in here and you've got this like next of type field, it'd be pretty trivial for us to just store the type in there, right? So that doesn't really seem that bad to me. When we actually do that set asset type, we could just put it there. So maybe we'll do that. Also, that stuff is kind of irrelevant anyway because we're going to probably eliminate that. It's sort of a non-issue at this point. But anyway, so in here, when we do set asset type, we want to get the asset. We want to assert that the asset type is 0, and then we want to set that asset type, right? Again, it's a little fragile because like what happens if you want to change the type of an asset? It just doesn't work. And so I think, again, this is something that we're really going to have to change the way we were doing it. We had this sort of fairly fragile like way that we were looking through, and this is just for tag matching. So what we're really going to want to do as we go forward is we're just going to want to have a tag matching index that we just rebuild, right? And so I think like this is a to-do here. So I think we just want to make sure that that's a little bit more robust going forwards. Anyway, when we come through here, we're going to want to do set asset type on this thing, and so we're going to have you know, something that actually does this check here, so we don't call this unnecessarily, and that's going to be right modification stage HA, yeah. No, actually, that's not what I wanted. What I actually wanted was this. So what I want to do here is I want to get this piece of information out. So I want to say like, hey, let's get which asset we're talking about in this case, and actually pull that out, right? And I want to make sure that the asset index actually exists. If it doesn't exist, I'm not going to do anything to it because we don't stamp things that aren't there, right? We only stamp things that are. And so we'll start with that, and that needs to be obviously in sort of a double for because we're going to be going over an entire tag array, stamping anything that we see inside the tag array. So much like in the code that is in here somewhere, for loop on that, yeah, it's in there somewhere. No, you know. So this, right? Where we're going to actually look and see when we come through the tag array, we're going to figure out, like much like this code here, we're going to look through all of the asset indices in the actual file. So we're going to say, look, there's our counts that we're going to go through, and then we're going to go through these one by one. And for each of them, we're going to grab the asset that corresponds to it, and we're going to try and stamp it if there actually is an asset there. So assuming that there is an asset there, we're going to take a look and see if that asset has a particular type involved. Again, we need to get the tags out here. So if you take a look at the import grid tag, if I jump out to here and say import grid tag array there, right, we got the first tag index, one past last tag index, that sort of thing. So what I want to do here is say, let's grab that out. So here's the tags that go with it. Grid tags, like so. So now we've got the tags and the asset index. I guess I can delay actually looking for it by doing this. If we then look to see and say that, hey, there is an asset, and we expect to be able to do something with it, but oddly enough, there wasn't actually supposed to be anything in this slot. You know, oops. So we can actually act on that. Here I'm going to say only set this in that case, and off we go. Right? So that's basically what we're dealing with here. I guess previously we just did this, and that's fine too. So now we start moving through this code. We set up all of our tags and we stamp them and stuff like that, but as you can see here, we want to kind of be a little bit broader. We need to merge these tag sets together. All of this stuff is fine, and so really what we want to do here is when we do this stamp, we need a place to get the errors from, and that's fine too. So all of this stuff looks pretty clean. The stamping should be pretty basic. So the only thing we're really going to have to do is do a temporary tag build here so that we can merge the two sets of tags together, the one that came from the template and the one that's been like merged into the file, right? And so what we want to do is probably jump down to parse tag list, use the builder here, and just merge those two tags together. So we're going to do that right here. Here's the easiest way to do that, right? And then when we do our end tags like this, that's the thing that'll give us the temp array there, right? And so let's see, combined tags here, write them out there, and we're done, right? So I think that's all we need to do to get our tag merging and all that stuff working. And then of course asset names and source files and errors and all that garbage will, just be in there. And so when we actually do this import here, what we can see is when we do our source tags like so, we need to merge from two different tag arrays. We need to first merge from the tag array that comes here, and then we need to merge from the tag array that comes, and in fact, let me just duplicate that, from the append tags. So first let's take this one. We've got that specified right here, so we just do tags, tags. We append each of those tags on, no big deal there. That should be it. And then here we do the exact same thing with the ones that we're appending. Right, pretty straightforward. So again, we don't need to worry about holes in the grid because we're only going to import when there's actually an asset index. So that's fine. We won't be creating assets in places where they didn't exist before because we're only going to ever see them. I'm going to go ahead and call this Y or X and Y index because we know those are the only things we actually have here. And then I think we're good. Looking through here, this is just a dot, right? And we should probably make this just be a thing that comes with the builder by default, so that you can just say merge and it'll merge. Tag sets, let me see what else we got here. So tags is not a member of import grid tag. That's true. And that's that. I'm not sure what the problem is. There it is. Get rid of that. That's all good. And in here we've got a tokenizer that's got to get passed down there. I think that's just for reporting out of memory errors, if I'm not entirely mistaken. If we want to sort of propagate that forward, we would need to pass the tokenizer here. I'm not adverse to that because, again, it just helps us report errors at the correct location, which I like. So let's see, HHA assets. In this case, what don't we have? Info in this case is just the fields. And so this is pretty easy to restore. That's just going to be this, like so. In here where we write the asset file source name, that is not currently getting passed down, so we're probably going to need to pass that down. Although really it sort of is, because if you take a look at what's going on here, actually we can just get it. Here's that base name, and we know what that asset source file actually is coming from in terms of the source file itself. So I think that's really just fine. So I don't know why that was actually flagged. That may actually not have been a problem at all. So I assume it's just asset file here that's the problem, where we're doing write asset string. In terms of what actually needs to get passed down there, so if we look at what asset file expects, I think that wants to know this, which we haven't actually retrieved yet. And so we want to get that by index. So we want like get asset file or get file. You know what I mean? This. So in here, when we actually go to write this out and we're calling stamp assets, we want to be able to get the file in question. That file is going to be, you know, whatever our source says it's going to be, and from then we should not have a problem with that. Oh, and sorry, that's called asset file. Right. It looks like we're basically done. So now we just need that HHA asset. That needs to actually get sort of stamped. That HHA asset is coming from the asset itself. So where we're actually writing that in, that actually needs to be more like, you know, this. So that it can actually stamp into the asset itself. But I think then we're good to go. So I think this needs to take the tokenizer. Otherwise, we're good. HHA stem here. These are arrows. And again, we're going to have to flow that down. All these old paths were written before that became passed in. And that's it. So you can see a lot of work, a lot of bookkeeping, but it's slowly starting to take reasonable shape. And you can see if we were writing this originally without having sort of route found to it, it wouldn't be too hard to just make one of these from whole cloth. There's not that much code there, right? And so as we start to refine it, I think we're kind of zeroing in on something reasonable. And so I'm not too worried about where that's going. Now we should be able to actually do an import from the HTTP, and it should actually work. I think that's at the point where it's testable. And so the thing that wouldn't actually work yet is the import that goes from one HHT to a new one and puts in edited data. That wouldn't work, and the reason that it wouldn't work is because we haven't done the copy yet. And so we'll have to do some work there, but I think we could start to test this and see if this actually can start to build HHT files. Let's just start down that debugging path. I think we've got like 5 minutes left. Let's just see how bad a shape we're in. Or actually, no, I think we have more than that. I think we actually have 20 minutes left. All right. So what I want to do here is I want to compile in debug mode, and I just want to kind of step through the code. Oh, whoops. We've got 2 of those open. My bad. Let's get rid of those there. I want to compile in debug mode, and I want to look through this code and just see what's going on, right? Because we've done a ton of stuff. We probably made a lot of mistakes, and so we want to kind of start to look through what we're doing. And see how it's going. So I want to go ahead and jump. Oh, and you know what? We never set that asset type to 0 when we initialize an asset yet. So we should do that. Let's go ahead and look at set asset type. So you can see it here. When we actually allocate these, yeah, you can see us doing it. So what we want to do is say type equals 0. Where is that next of type? Next. So what's interesting about that is we're not initializing that next of type. Oh, there we go. And I'm like, so it should have been initialized for us as a clear to 0. So that was because I accidentally left a not in there. But that does remind me there's a couple other things we did want to do here. So that dest file index is probably not going to get set here because when we load the things in, it's not going to say where it came from. We do want it to say where it came from. So if you look in here and we go back to handmade asset.h. So as we come through here and we see this like asset source file, that dest file index, when we create that asset source file, we want that to be specified. And so in here where we actually create the source file in question, and you can see we do a get or create. What I want to do there is I want to have that, when that gets read in, I want that to say where it came from, right? And so in here, the setting that we set like that, that dest file index wants to get set in here. So when we get that source file, I want that to be like set. Okay. And that, because we weren't, that was a new field we added that, would never get set. Would never get set. All right, so moving on. Again, like I said, I want to step through some of this code. Here's the game loading. These are the old HHAs, right? So that's, nothing's going on there. And so the first thing that should happen is if we actually try to trigger a rebuild, we should get hit here. And I'm expecting we'll get an error because we currently don't ever create new files, right? And so when we start parsing and we say this is the HHA this should go into, we should not find that HHA. And so this is what I'm expecting to happen if we miraculously have no bugs. That's what should happen, right? But we probably do have bugs, so that's probably not what's going to happen. But just so you know, that's what we're talking about. So I'm going to hit import and save, and I think we're supposed to, when we hit that button, we should get down to here. Now, Handmade internal, we didn't turn that off, did we? Yeah, it's set to 1. So when I push that button, we should get breakpoint here. It's making me a little nervous that this is grayed out. How does it know that Handmade internal isn't pound defined? I mean, we should be able to see that code path, right? Yeah, so just because it's grayed out, that's just Visual Studio being its usual buggy self. So here we go. First, we're going to say let's get all the HHT files. And hey, look, we got one. Let's see what it actually is. It's intro cutscene.hht. That's great. That's correct. So we're going to open that file, and we're going to read in the contents, and then we're going to close it, right? And so what we should see now is we should have a file buffer here. That file buffer should have the entire thing in it. If I open up this little text viewer here, you can see, like, hey, that's exactly what we expect. So off to a reasonable start. We're going to start tokenizing. Again, tokenizer is now supposed to have things like file and line number information. Let's make sure that's right. Yeah, it's there. That's good. The file name is intro cutscene. That's exactly what we expect. So off we go. We start our parsing. We get a token. What is that first token? Pray tell, because we don't know. Let's see. The first token is what? An unknown. So our tokenizer is busted, and we need to fix it. It didn't parse the comment, which it was supposed to parse. So I'm going to go ahead and rerun that and do that operation a second time. So I'm just going to click this button, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to run to here. I'm going to step in. The first thing we call is get token raw. That's exactly what we should call. And so now we're going to take a look at what the character settings actually are. So here's our C. It's set to /. We jump into here, we look and check what it actually is. Now we should hit one of these comment paths. It should be this one, right? So we should parse into there, but we're not. Okay, so we're not actually, that match didn't work. Probably, you know why? It's because we already sucked up that character. So actually, yeah, this path is not correct. So we gotta fix that. When we did that actual port, we screwed it up. Totally fine. So this actually needs to be C, and this needs to actually be based on whatever the thing we're going to advance is, right? And so it really looks like this. And so that still probably should be fine. Everything else, I think, is okay. Oops. That's probably fine. Looking at the parsing of is number, that looks incorrect because, as you can see, it's sort of doing a peak on C there, and you want to actually have that first digit recorded properly. So this should actually be this, right? So, you know, looking through this, probably we shouldn't have pulled the advance. It probably would have been smarter not to do that. Yeah. So that might not have been the smartest way to write that, but that's okay. You can see what the bug was, right? So it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to jump right to here so that we can, you know, debug that more easily. Oops. Don't know what that did. So when we start parsing here, I'm going to jump into the get token raw. And when I do this switch now, I'm expecting to be able to flow through this comment block. And thankfully, I actually do now. And so we kind of eat away. You can see it slowly eating through this string. By the time we get to here, we should have eaten the entire comment, hopefully. And if we see that we actually did get a valid stopping point here, we can advance forward. This should really check the entire thing. I'm not sure why it didn't. I guess it doesn't really matter because the advanced chars 2 should still work either way, so it's probably fine. But anyway, so we now get the token. It's a comment, so we should get another token. And let's see if we get the correct token this time. We got an end of line token. That's also correct. So when we look at that, the line number should actually advance, and it did, right? So that's good. We'll skip that, and now we should see what's the token we got now? Just some more notes. These are the assets for the intro cutscene. Is that what it should actually be? I want to see what the actual files. I don't remember. So what token did we actually get back here? We got an end of line. And there's a note Casey, but I don't understand where that's coming from. I'm looking at the wrong file. Okay, so no, that's right. That's another comment. It should get skipped. That's exactly what I expect. And now we've got to our string, right? So the first thing we got was a string. That doesn't seem right because we should have gotten an identifier first, right? So that seems still a little broken because the first thing that we got there, unless I'm mistaken, oh, no, it wasn't. It was token identifier. All right, never mind. I just misread that branch. Okay, good. So we look here and we've got a token identifier and we immediately hit an error. And that's actually correct. Import blocks are not allowed to appear. So that's actually great. We caught that error and didn't do the parse. And so what we know there is this doesn't have the HHA on it, right? And so I'm tempted to say let's leave that error in there so that we can work on our error processing. So I'm going to go ahead and say let's not change that. Let's go to basegame.hht and watch it parse this and see how that goes. So here we are in parsing that one. Let's take a look at that first token. That's going to be the directive. So we look at that directive. Here's the HHA. We're going to get that stem. What's the stem? It's base game. We're going to try and get that. We should get back a 0 because it won't find it. It doesn't. We get the error there. And then we can move on, right? So again, our token thing was a little busted. Other than that, our error checking actually passed with flying colors, at least for those first basic errors. It prevented 2 errors. One trying to start writing to a file that it couldn't actually open, and another one that's just there to try and make sure that you've specified where you're actually going to write things to. Now, what we want to do here is figure out how we do want to handle this case where you're specifying an HHA that doesn't actually exist. And so if I do a get or create, this call right here is going to look to see whether or not it can find the HHA in question. And if it can't, we want to potentially create a blank HHA. Now, we do know how to create a blank HHA because in our HHA edit, we actually have a -create call, right? And so right here, that already does exist, and you can see it's pretty trivial. All it does is just write a blank header into the file. And furthermore, that header is going to get rewritten like every time anyway. So we almost don't even really need to do that if we don't want to, because when we actually go to open that file for writing, it would just rewrite the header anyway if it actually had any data to write in the first place. But either way, let's suppose we were going to do this. We would want to do the equivalent of that. And we'd want some way of opening an actual file handle that would create the file for us. Now, that's not that hard to do. We just need our platform layer to be a little bit more understanding, because what happens at the moment is that if we actually say platform get file by path, there's no way to tell this thing that we actually want to make sure that it always exists, right? And so what we could do here is say, well, we've already got these mode flags. Let's just tell it, hey, you know what? You pass those flags when you do this as well, so that if you ask to get a file by path, we can actually create it if it doesn't exist. And so if we jump back down to the Win32 code path there, and we look at the open file by path, in here, sorry, get file by path, in here where we actually get that information, you can see us getting the information here. What we can do is we can allocate file info for something that doesn't actually exist and return that if you asked us to write to it, right? So if you told us we want to write to this file, we can create it. And so what I'll do there is say, hey, let's do a get file attributes, and we'll do the result here. If we couldn't get that, let's create the file and then try again, right? So I really just want to do this so that we'll try twice. Make sense? And so what I want to do is have a create file here where we do, essentially this. And so in the case where we say get file attributes and it doesn't actually return, we'll do a test here to say, well, if the mode says that you would allow writing, so you're trying to actually create one of these potentially, if it doesn't exist already, then we'll just say, all right, if you wanted to open it for writing, then when we do this, we can, do the full 9 yards with the permissions and the creation and all that sort of stuff. And then if we get back a valid handle, then what we can do is, process it from there, right? And we actually have, I think, yeah. We can just do a close handle on that and then get the file info and go from there. So what we really need is just a way to get generate our sort of creation operations, generic write, open always, that sort of stuff, right? So what we would really need is something that does that. Now, if we want to, we can actually make it so that we don't actually have to create that that data. So the Win32 allocate file info, where is that? Win32 allocate, oops. Win32 allocate file info. What you can see there is that just uses like this sort of synthetic stuff. We could just say, let's just give it a fake one of those, right? And have it use that. So we don't even really need to do this part because that would happen automatically. So what we could do is say, all right, let's create a fake one of these as necessary, right? And just say, yeah, in fact, we could just say like 0 struct out that data, right? And set the relevant portions of it, like the path 16 part and so on. That seems pretty reasonable to me. Now I'm looking at this here and I'm just wondering, when we're taking a look at this where we do Win32 allocate file data, I'm not sure where it's actually getting the name from though. Where is that actually happening? So this is actually incomplete, isn't it? Because this path 16 is never getting set on there. So this is actually not right. You know what I'm saying? Because that information should have been passed down. So, yeah, we didn't quite finish this code, it looks like. Because here's where that's getting created here, right? It does allocate file info, but then it does this operation that you actually do need to do, right? Where it puts the information in for what the platform's going to need to open the file. That's actually getting copied in there. And we're not doing that. And we need to do that. Right? So in this routine where we actually call Win32 get file by path, this was actually bogus. We shouldn't have done it that way. So what we should be doing here is we should say, look, if we can get this, or we're writing to it. So even if this fails, we'll still do this. And then at the end here, we just need to set those actual parameters, right? Because the file name and stuff was not getting set here. So when we actually get that file info back, we need to set, base name, and we need to set platform. Now, in here, we've already got it, so it's pretty easy, right? The path 16 is the platform name, and you're passing in the actual path itself. So that we could put in here, and maybe we should duplicate it or not. I'm not sure. Like to do Casey, like should the base name be duplicated? And maybe the answer is yes, maybe the answer is no. I really couldn't tell you. But in this case, that's the open question. But what would happen in here if we wanted to get or create one of these is we would first need to, get that file by path using a file group that we create somehow. And then we'd have to open the file handle for writing. Now, that file group, I believe, do we actually have that in the assets itself? Because we should have actually stored it. Let me take a look at where we do that. So when we actually do the platform file group here, we do get all files of type begin. And then we come down here. Yeah, we do get all files of type end. And so that needs to, we could keep it around. I guess we don't really have to, though. Because what we could do here is just say, like, look, open the file group for these things, like so, right? And then we want to create one of these things by name in the case where it actually wasn't already in existence. So it's a little janky. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like we want to kind of clean up the way we're doing these. We kind of need something a little bit more purpose-built for the types of operations we're actually doing. But for the most part, it's still pretty good. So in here, what we want to do is, get file by path. And we want to do something that looks sort of like this, right? What was that? There it is. And so at least at the moment, what we want to do is get that out of the data directory. Actually, we don't need to do it like that. So we just need to do like data and then the stem, right? And then we have to sort of create that HHA, and it doesn't actually exist yet, right? So we need to sort of bootstrap it, if you will. So if we take a look at how this works in here, we would need to take that stem and we just need to put it in, right, like so. And then we would want to get that as a path to the extent that it is able to do so. And then when we call that function, remember, we need to now say what we're actually going to be doing with those. So, are we reading or writing? And in this case, we want to be able to do both. So when we come through here, when we create the blank HHA, this is us doing that, and we just need a way to write it. And so we need to do like a write file. So in here where we've got write data to file, we need to pass the file handle, and we need to pass the offset, the size, and the address. Right? So we do need to do this, and again, it's kind of annoying because since we're sort of retrofitting the asset system to do these kinds of in-place merges, it's not set up the best for it, and we probably want to do a path to clean that up once we know what everything actually is. But at the moment, that's actually okay. So here's us getting that file info by path, and then assuming that we get it, we can do a platform file handle where we open that. And actually, looking at it, we want to do that as the same way that we did the other files in the system. So back in here where we've sort of got those files, where are those files? When we initially open them, you can see them happening here, right? So when we go through and we open all these files the first time through, you can see us doing this where we sort of open them and create we sort of create the initial stem with the asset base and the tag base and that sort of things for them, right? And since this is a new file, all of this stuff, right, none of this stuff really has to happen. And so the initial settings for it don't have to have, they don't have to be retracted or anything of that sort. But because we want to keep this code as simple as possible, probably, what I think we want to do is actually call this so we're always going through the same path, if that makes sense. Probably. That's my guess. That just seems like the sanest thing to do. So if we actually create one of these here, what we want to do is like do a write to it and then basically call this code path and let it do this entire thing, even though it's somewhat redundant, just to make sure that we're always doing the same code path, right? So that there's like a init source HHA kind of a thing that happens here. And so that in this code, when we do this, we can essentially just say that and have that work, right? And then we've got a couple things here that need to kind of get passed through. This is going to be, on there. There's the file info, needs to get passed down. Although I might say that this actually should be this order. And then that stem needs to get remembered. So so it's actually going to do that from the base name. Okay, so that's fine. So actually the stem here in this case, we really just need the arena that's being used. The arena in this case is always the same, though. It's the non-restored memory, right? So I don't feel like that actually, that can just be gotten off the assets. It doesn't actually need to be passed. The file group does want to be there. Like so. And that should be mostly it, I think. Yeah. Okay. So just taking a look at this as we move forward. So what I want to do here is I want to be able to open one of these platform files. I want to write this thing, and then I want to essentially call initialize on it. So after we're done with that, I'm going to call here like, hey, init source HHA. I want to call it with the file index that we're talking about. So basically, the result, effectively. And I want to pass all the rest of the data that actually needs to operate so that I know it's going through the same path. Even though it's going to repeat some work, I don't mind. So calling that, I got to pass the file index. I got to pass the file group, which I have. I have to pass the file info, which I also have, right? And so as long as I just create this piece of information for it, we should be good to go. So when I come in here, I need to do a platform file handle. There's the handle. That's going to be an open file write that has to happen on there. So platform, open file or whatever. And then we have to close it. And And so it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's not what I would prefer, but, you know, oh well. So if all of that stuff works, so if literally all of this works, then we'll do an init source HHA, but otherwise we won't, right? So all of that stuff has to occur and has to work. And, you know, assuming that it all does, then we'll continue forward with it, right? Okay, so what's the problem here? That's supposed to be size of. Not sure what the problem is here. Get file by path. This needs to take an open file read. So does this, right? Thought we passed a mode to that now. Oops. It's a mode flags. Okay. So open file is complaining. I think it's because that. And I guess this is an isValid test. How is this supposed to work? Platform file handle. So there's just a no errors. And so I think all we need to do now is actually assign the result here. So what we want to do is say end result equals 0. And you know, the number of asset files that we can store is actually allowed. So the max file count here, we need to do a like and, you know, file count is less than max file count, right? So we have to have room to put this thing. So assuming that's the case, then we can just say, all right, the result equals the assets file count, and that can get incremented. We don't actually need to do that until everything actually works, right? Until we actually get all the way down here, we don't have to assign it an actual index. So it's kind of just like literally right there that ever actually happens. And I think that's all we would really need to do. I don't know if close file happens here. We can put it here if we want to. Just to make sure it always gets closed in all cases. So if I do this, right, I think that works. And I think we're good to go. So the only thing that I might suggest is I kind of would rather it looks more like this at that point, and I would probably also say I would rather that it look like this. So when I do init that HHA, right, that actually happens on here. So this gives back one of those indices. So I think that's all fine, and that way when we actually do this file index result, right, that thing is going to be set to 0, and then if we actually get one of these, then it equals file count, and we can increment that, right? And that allows us to make this be something that, you know, makes more sense, right? That way we're not passing file index anymore. And so this code here, when it actually does the assets file count bit, it's not going to do that, and it's not going to do this. What we're actually going to do is say, hey, just like everything else, assets file count actually ends up equaling 1, and that's fine. When we allocate our array of asset files, we're actually going to put on the max file count, and the max file count is going to actually be based on however many of these things there were going to be, which I believe is in the file group. It gives us a count of those, right? So in here, when we look at the platform file group, it's got the file count. So we're going to take a look at that file count, and we're going to do that. If we're in Handmade internal, we're going to allow like for a bunch of headroom, like we do with everything else, right? And so then we allocate that array and leave space. So if we need to add anything else, then we've got our file index here. Doesn't actually need to occur anymore. So this can now just be init source HHA forever, where it just passes the file info and the assets. And we don't even need to know what that return value is anymore. It's just not relevant, right? And so I think that's all we need to actually do here. And then when we can look at that init source HHA code, and we need to pass, in addition to the file info, we just need to pass the file group. So I think that's proper, and that just kind of extends that to allowing us to create some files. It's not as clean as I would like, because again, we probably could just use allocate on demand here, and like so it just wasn't a particularly useful way to structure those as an array. So it would be nice if we probably change that. There's no reason for them to be an array, and so it's just kind of holding us back, right? So a lot of the stuff, now that we're sort of looking at it, these could really be changed into a more per allocation system. There's really not a reason not to, and so we're just kind of that's just like legacy code that's hampering us a little bit, unfortunately. So let's just go ahead and wrap up the stream by verifying that approach will work. We can still run the game, which is good, so it means we didn't break any of that part. I'm going to run through to here and just see if we can actually create a file now, and then we'll stop there. So if I actually click import and save here and jump to that part of it, when we actually get to the HHA part of things, this part is supposed to error out, right? Because remember, we're on the file that doesn't actually have that. So let's go ahead and parse that HHA directive and jump into this code here. So we're not going to find the HHA that we're talking about because no one has created that HHA. Again, we're looking for one that's actually called base game, and that one does not exist. So let's see if we can create one. We're going to open an iteration on these guys. We're going to create our own name, which is this name here, right? So it's going to be data / base game.hha. We're going to try and get a file by that path and see if we can. Let's take a look. So we get a file info. It looks like we got it okay. So then we're going to try and open that file and see if we got a handle back. Yeah, that's correct. So we come in here. We didn't have any errors, so that's nice. We try to write the data to the file. We do it there. And now we come through and try to initialize that file. We do have room because we have plenty of extra files here. So we should now be able to process this as a read-write file. So coming through here, let's see if we can open it. We can't for some reason. Why is that? I'm not sure. Database game.hha should exist. So for some reason, we were not actually able to read that, and I'm not sure why. So you can see that we actually created it properly, and if I dump it, it's valid, right? So our code actually worked great up to a point. When we actually went to open it, though, we couldn't open it again for some reason, and it's unclear what that reason actually was. Looking in here, oh, well, actually, it's not unclear. So the problem is right here. It's because we haven't closed it yet. So in that case, yeah, the close file handle, that actually needed to happen beforehand. So a better way to do this would probably be to go like this. Right? So this is actually the way we should be doing that, not the way I was doing it before. But that looks fine. because I want to be able to call close file on this pretty much anytime I want to. So I think we still did it correctly, so that's good. And so I think then we're done. Now we can proceed with doing the rest of the testing there and seeing if it actually works. I'm going to call it for now. And we will go to a very brief Q&A, and then we'll have an announcement about the 4Coder Jam situation. Let me go ahead and do a QA here, which I have to do on the other stream for some reason. So there we go. Done. We have one of the new line cases that's still parsing @1. Sorry, that was a typo there. And we'll have to do some testing of this, right? We didn't really test any of this stuff. Yeah, you're right. You had a note you changed for it to do, but what if by with the right data indicated the code wasn't or isn't using the right data? Let me take a look. No, but it is the right data. You know? Any questions? Looks like no questions. Which makes sense. I mean, basically, we're just doing bookkeeping on the asset importing. So we're using a KVM in that setup, and do you like it? So actually, I was using a KVM switch from iOmega, and I didn't like it. And it actually was causing a bunch of problems. And then I switched to, and actually, to be clear, it wasn't actually a KVM switch. It was just keyboard and mouse. A KVM switch is technically video as well. This was not video, because I don't actually need to switch to video. I just need to switch to keyboard and mouse. I upgraded to one by AV Access that's like a more substantial one. Probably cost about twice as much, maybe. I mean, it still wasn't super expensive by computer equipment standards. It was like $80 or something. So, I mean, computer equipment is expensive, so that's not that expensive in the grand scheme of things. But it was more expensive than the iOmega one was. And it's much better. It actually works on all machines, which Ubuntu used to have a problem with it sometimes, understanding what was going on. And so it was causing problems there. Also, this one has just a button you push for any given input, so you can switch directly. The iOmega, you had to like click to get to one, and I hate that. So you had to kind of this AV Access one's really good. It's actually a four-way HDMI and keyboard and mouse switcher. I don't use the video, so the video could be totally broken for all I know, and I'd have no idea. So I really couldn't tell you, right? Do you have an idea as to what the gameplay of Handmade Hero will be, or just doing more of that design exploration? I do have an idea of what the gameplay will be like, but this is not really a gameplay, or this is not a game design stream, so that is not a focus, right? The gameplay will be just because we need there to be gameplay on top of an engine in order for it to be a game, technically. And you don't really know if all the stuff in the engine's working unless you can actually play a game and it works, right? So it's like a proof of concept too, in that sense. But this is absolutely not a game design stream, and I will say that repeatedly when we're doing game development of just the play stuff, as I'm explicitly disavowing any suggestion that you should be listening to that as a game designer. This is not a game design stream, and it should not be watched by game designers because it is not about game design and will never be about game design. There will not be a single episode of this stream about game design ever. We will end the Handmade Hero series without ever having talked about game design at all because we don't do that here. Repeating my question, what makes asset importing special the way you're doing it compared to other ways in other game libs? I don't think there is something special about it. I mean, every game needs to have some, process by which asset importing happens. I don't think we're doing anything particularly out of the ordinary. One thing that is a little bit different from how some other code bases do it is we don't spam strings into our executable everywhere. So sometimes the way that asset importing works in game engines is like strewn throughout the entire code will just be strings talking about PNGs and stuff, right? And we don't do that. We actually define like a rigorous set of enums for tags and stuff like that. So that's one thing that some asset imports do and some asset imports don't do. And so we are on that side of that fence. But that is not unique to Handmade Hero. There are plenty of asset systems designed to not spam strings everywhere. So, that may be unusual compared to some asset imports, but it's certainly not unusual across all asset imports. So I would say there's nothing special about the way we're doing it, I don't think. We've made some specific choices that other asset systems probably do slightly differently, but they're all basically doing the same thing, which is they're trying to marshal a bunch of disparate source files and pull them into the game in a way that the game can recognize what they're supposed to do, right? And so, we sort of have a sprite sheet kind of approach. There is some things we do differently. So, again, depending on the pipeline in question, some pipelines don't try to actually only use the elements of the sprite sheet that actually get used. Some of them just pull in the entire sprite sheets and ship that, right? So we are a little bit better than that, right? We do only keep the parts of sprite sheets that actually have stuff in them. But again, most professional asset pipelines would be doing that. It's only kind of the janky amateur hour stuff that wouldn't be doing that anyway. So again, I don't really consider that to be special. On the whole, we are not a particularly advanced asset pipeline compared to a very high-end asset pipeline. Yeah, checksum right now is a murmur hash. I think that's what we used. When you import assets, do they go into some kind of target like a texture atlas? We are not using a texture atlas because we chose to use texture arrays instead. And so when we import our assets, actually the way that it works is we just pack the data that we receive directly into our source data files, just the part that's actually used. And then at runtime, when we actually stream that asset in, when we detect that somebody needs it, we place it into a free portion of the texture array. So if there's a place in the texture array we haven't used yet, we use that. If we don't have a place in the texture array that hasn't been used yet, we just evict something and put it there. So we don't use a texture atlas. that's a different method than the method we're using. And also, to give a little bit more perspective, Texture Atlas and Sprite Sheet, while some people may use them interchangeably, technically they're not the same thing. Sprite Sheet is a statement about an art asset. So if you're talking about a sprite sheet, what you're talking about is an artist has made a single image that has multiple different sprite images packed into it in some way, right? That is a sprite sheet. A texture atlas is just the word for any texture image that you might use in a game or anywhere, really, where you have packed in some way some set of data into it that isn't just one single rectangular image. Now, it has nothing to do with what an artist may have made, right? An artist doesn't usually make a texture atlas directly. Usually, when you talk about a texture atlas, you're talking about something that some preprocessor took a bunch of data and jammed it in a particular way with certain borders of certain sizes, right? And more specifically, texture atlases, although in the case of a 2D game, this may often be the case for simplicity and because you're not really usually pushing GPU memory to its limits. In the case of a 3D game, a texture atlas can often refer to things that aren't even rectangularly packed, right? So a texture atlas may have things that are irregular, that are all kind of shoved together with just a little bit of space in between them. And then you're actually pulling like shaped regions out of them, because you have to imagine like you've got like triangle meshes that are pulling out of these things. They don't actually have to be rectangular, right? So again, sprite sheet is an art term if you're using it properly. Texture atlas is a technical rendering term. And while you can make a sprite sheet that you use directly as a texture atlas because you do no processing on it when you pull it in and you pull out of it directly from the thing the artist actually painted, you can do that. That's just a possible thing that could happen. But there is no actual correspondence between a sprite sheet and a texture atlas by definition. They're two very different concepts. It might help to clarify that distinction, right? We are not using texture atlases. We are sort of using sprite sheets. When the artists make something that would go into Handmade Hero, they are going to be making them based on a sprite layout. We have a number of them. So those sprite layouts look, like this. Here's an example, right? And you can see that there's a bunch of blank space. So that's a very good example of why we don't use this at runtime. Another reason is because it's much higher res than we use at runtime. We actually downsample because the source art is higher res than the actual one used in game. But that's one of the reasons why we go through and we actually only extract the pieces from the sprite sheet that we actually see. Anywhere in the sprite sheet that doesn't have a frame of animation for it, we just don't save, right? And again, that's just to make it so that we're not just saving gobs of empty nonsense in there, right? So that's all. All right, I think that's it for questions, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for joining me for an episode of Handmade Hero. It's been a pleasure coding with you, as always. If you do want to follow along the series at home, you can always pre-order the game on handmadehero.org. It comes with a source code so that you can, sort of follow along with what I'm doing and also play around with it yourself, do some experimentation, and so on, right? Now, I wanted to make an announcement. Next weekend is actually not going to be a regular episode of Handmade Hero. We're going to have a special episode of Handmade Hero. And that's fine because we're at a good stopping point, actually. We've kind of done all of the work, all the main structural work. And so it's okay to take a little bit break and come back after skipping a week to do the debugging process, right? Because that's sort of a separate thing. But what I want to say is next weekend will be a very special stream. What we're going to be doing is, as you know, I did a bunch of upgrades to 4Coder. I spent about 3 weeks on it, which was more than I was originally planning to, but I kind of just wanted to get it all done. So I did a ton of upgrades to 4Coder, most of which you have not seen yet because I have not actually updated the 4Coder in 2 weeks' time. The goal with a lot of those modifications was to get them back into 4Coder proper so that everyone can use them. Why? I don't know. I'm just feeling generous, I guess. Who knows? But so what I wanted to do was get all of those modifications back to Alan so that they could get into 4Coder and be mainlined over time. So in order to do that, though, I've made like so many updates to the source base. At this point, it's not super feasible to just hand it over. So what we wanted to do was have Alan and I get together and just kind of go over all the stuff, move it into 4Coder as best we can as sort of an adjunct system that can get built alongside the 4Coder source code. And then once that's happening, I think Alan will then be able to sort of move them over into 4Coder over time. So basically all of the mods that I've made can get mainlined in as sort of he gets a chance to digest those and, you know, expand them a bit. Because obviously they're like totally specific to how I wanted it to work. And so, you know, he's going to want to broaden a lot of them probably to make them more generally applicable to the way everyone else might want to mod it and so on. So what we're going to do this coming weekend is we're going to do a 4Coder jam. Alan and I will probably both stream or we'll do some kind of hybrid stream or something. So it'll either be on his channel or my channel or both channels at the same time, depending on what we can get working. And so stay tuned for more information about that. But basically, should be basically the same way you watch Handmade Hero. The schedule will go up. It's just instead of a normal episode of Handmade Hero, it'll be the 4Coder Jam. And we don't know yet whether it'll be Saturday and Sunday or just Saturday. We'll see how far we get through it. We may find that we just haven't gotten far enough after Saturday's over, and then we'll do a Sunday. So that's our plan. It's a little bit tentative, but you know that's what we're planning to do. So stay tuned for that, and we should, you know, be able to post on the watch page on the Twitter, Alan's and mine and Handmade Hero, what's going on, so that you'll be up to date with what's going on there. And so that should be pretty exciting. We've got tons of new features that I think will be pretty awesome and that you'll want to see. So far, like basically, like it's really, really far ahead of Emacs now. So, you know, compared to what Alan originally replaced, which was Emacs, you know, 4Coder has sort of been a replacement that was way better performant, but was missing some of the features of Emacs. Alan has slowly added basically all the features from Emacs that I was using, except for what's the word I'm looking for? Except for macro recording. Macro recording is something Alan working on now, so I haven't looked at that. But what I did is I went ahead and just added a ton of features that basically takes it like way past anything that Emacs ever did by far, right? So now it's got like just way better sort of feature support than Emacs had, because Emacs was basically a giant bloated pile of Lisp stuff, most of which does things I didn't care about, and it really didn't have a lot of features for things I do care about, like really fast code-based navigation, things that I wanted, and stuff like that. So what I've done is I've kind of gone like, all right, now that 4Coder's up to the point where it basically replaced Emacs, what can I do to like basically get better than Emacs everywhere? Where I, you know, can just say like, okay, literally every operation I ever do on a code base, this is way better than what Emacs was providing. And so I've done that. And when we combine that back with what Alan's doing with macro recording, which is the one feature that was still missing, I think by that time, it'll just be like totally trouncing Emacs. Like it would be crazy that you'd ever bother to use Emacs, assuming that what you do is code C++ for a living, right? So that's it, and we'll be doing that next weekend, and that will include like demos of all the new features and stuff, which I think you'll be pretty interested in. So don't miss it. Until then, have fun programming, everybody, and I'll see everyone on the internet. Take it easy.